Hello, my name is Olivia Nauman. Today I will be telling you a bit about the major waste issues in Australia. I chose this topic because I will be in Australia for 3 weeks over break, and I thought it would be a great way to learn more about the culture before going. Let's begin with a background of Australia's domestic waste. I really feel like their progression mimics that of many first world countries. Early on, garbage disposal was a personal obligation, and many people chose to bury or dump their waste. There was little inorganic waste, so this method wasn't a huge concern initially. But as population size grew, this was not scalable. During the 19th century, people turned to oceanic dumping. Specifically, most of this was dumped within 5 miles of the shoreline. This led to concerns of water contamination, and during the early 20th century, health concerns regarding the bubonic plague and therefore regulations on oceanic dumping arose. Incineration became the primary form of waste disposal until the 50s and was still fairly common until recent decades. The 1950s brought the introduction of unlined landfills to Australia. The 1970s through today had seen exponential recycling growth. Lined landfills are now used and people are much more comfortable with recycling. Yet, with the introduction of many new materials, people are often left unsure of what they can and cannot recycle and what to do with their waste. Australia has not had the capacity in recent years to process all of their waste and have been sending some of it to China for processing. However, China put a lot of regulations on the waste they would accept early this year, specifically in January. I'm interested to see how these regulations will impact waste in Australia. But now I'd like to talk a little bit more about a specific issue that I was able to find a lot of information on, which is Australia's agricultural waste. Sugarcane is one of the key cash crops in Australia, especially in Queensland, which is the coastal state near the Great Barrier Reef. One of my sources states that approximately 85% of the raw sugar produced in Queensland is exported, generating up to $2 billion in export earnings for Queensland. Additionally, about 4,000 direct jobs come from this industry and another 12,000 indirect jobs. On the other side, we have Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Made up of coral, this is the world's largest living structure. The need to protect the Great Barrier Reef goes beyond the valued natural beauty and moral obligation. This area brings in an estimated $6.4 billion annually in tourism revenue and produces 64,000 jobs, a huge asset to the nation's economy overall. One report puts into perspective the $3 billion generated by recreational divers and boaters alone by saying that's more than 12 Sydney Opera Houses or the cost of building Australia's new submarines. It's even more than 4 times the length of the Great Wall of China in $100 notes. However, these two thriving industries are battling for government attention. The coral reefs are at risk of destruction due to high exposures to nitrogen, phosphorus, and pesticides from sugarcane farming. High rainfall accumulations and poor irrigation planning have encouraged the issue further by bringing the agricultural waste to groundwater and eventually the downstream ocean waters, where they can destroy reefs. One of my sources even credited 94% of the toxicity to the Great Barrier Reef to the sugarcane industry. So, with this great issue, why not eliminate the sugarcane farming altogether? The money motivating this industry, of course. The sugarcane industry and the Great Barrier Reef are two of the largest aspects to Australia's economies, and the government would be in a rough position sacrificing either piece of their economic puzzle. So, this leads us to ask what is being done about all this. First, work is being done to eliminate the need for pesticides and using more natural solutions. At the large scale of many of these farms, supplying over 95% of Australia's sugar intake, this can be difficult to eliminate entirely. Therefore, we look into optimizing farming practices and irrigation. This goes beyond experience and relies on data. Ideally, not overwatering crops leads to optimized yields and reduction in runoff. A few private companies and governmental agencies have taken action to positively impact this necessary balance between the prioritization of sugarcane farming and the Great Barrier Reef's health and correlated tourism industry. One well-known private example, led primarily by the Coca-Cola Foundation and the World Wildlife Fund, Australia, is Project Catalyst. Project Catalyst began with 15 major local sugarcane farmers and now has well over 78 farmers involved. The idea of the movement is that funding will be provided to farmers to implement strategies and technology to reduce environmental impact on their sugarcane farms. In fact, Coca-Cola contributed over $6 million between 2009 and 2016 to the movement. Another organization, Reef Alliance, consists of 14 partners and goes beyond just the focus on sugarcane production. Reef Alliance seeks to increase technical advancement and industry best practice in all types of agriculture, including grazing, horticulture, and broad acre cropping. A 50-year plan exists within this organization to outline steps necessary to protect the reef and the resources needed to support farmers. Finally, the Australian government's reef program appears to be the most formalized and coordinated venture toward reef protection. The Australian government has made their commitment to water quality improvement with an initial $200 million allocation to be divided between over 3,000 land managers. Beyond water quality, this program is also concerned with the ability to develop reef resilience to environmental stressors. Here are my citations to stand behind my content. This is, of course, a lot to look at. If anyone has any questions at all about specific figures, please feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to provide that information. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope that you've learned a few things about Australia and the waste issues they are dealing with.